Story number 1. Lost in the Haunted Desert, The Unspeakable Horrors of Monument Valley. 2001, Monument Valley, Arizona. In my younger years, I was an aspiring filmmaker, and I had just completed my first documentary. It was a joyous time, filled with ambition and dreams. Emma, my girlfriend at the time, was a passionate journalist, always chasing the next big story. One summer evening, she excitedly told me about strange occurrences in Monument Valley, mysterious deaths, whispers of exorcisms, and local legends about devil worship. "We should go," she exclaimed, eyes sparkling with adventure. "Think about it, Jack. A documentary about a haunted desert and paranormal events? It'd be groundbreaking." As we planned our journey, we decided to bring along two friends, Kyle, an enthusiastic historian, and Zoe, a skilled paramedic. Both had their own reasons to venture into the unknown. Kyle was keen on debunking myths, while Zoe simply wanted a thrilling experience. As we drove through the vast expanses of Monument Valley, the red sandstone formations loomed ominously. I remember setting up our campsite at the base of a large mesa, the landscape around us casting eerie shadows as the sun set. The first night was uneventful, with us sharing stories and speculations. But things changed on the second day. Emma had interviewed a few locals and discovered that a ritualistic killing had occurred in the area a century ago. Devil worshippers had reportedly performed an exorcism that had resulted in the death of a young girl. Her restless spirit was said to still wander the desert. That evening, Kyle found an ancient stone circle a few miles from our campsite. The arrangement of stones bore eerie similarities to the description given by locals about the ritual site. Eager to film our findings, I set up our camera and began to record. Suddenly, Zoe, who had been exploring nearby, let out a chilling scream. We rushed to her, finding her pale and trembling, pointing at a shadowy figure in the distance. The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. That night, we were awakened by piercing screams echoing through the valley. We never found out who or what it was, but the very next morning, we discovered markings on the sand outside our tents, symbols that Kyle recognized as ancient devil worship signs. Despite the unease, Emma's journalistic instinct compelled us to stay another day. However, as darkness fell, the desert's sinister nature became more pronounced. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, whispering voices surrounded our tents, and a cold, malevolent presence enveloped the campsite. On our final night, as we huddled together in fear, a tormented spirit manifested before us. A young girl, no older than 14, dressed in tattered robes, her eyes filled with pain. "Save me," she whispered, her voice a haunting lament. Without hesitation, Zoe began reciting prayers, urging the spirit to find peace. To our horror, other dark entities emerged from the shadows, surrounding the girl, their twisted forms filled with malice. We fled in terror, leaving behind most of our equipment. By dawn, we had reached the safety of a nearby town. We later discovered that the area where we had camped was known as the Cursed Grounds. Locals avoided it after sundown, and many believed that those who dared to spend a night there were doomed to be haunted forever. We never returned to Monument Valley. But the memories of that haunted desert, of the girl's tormented spirit and the unspeakable horrors we witnessed, still haunt my dreams. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear her desperate cries echoing in the distance, a chilling reminder of the evil that lurks in the shadows. Story number 2. The Forsaken Sands, The Ghosts of Joshua Tree. 2002, Joshua Tree, California. I had always been drawn to the supernatural, so when Alex, my best friend and fellow paranormal enthusiast, spoke of the eerie legends surrounding Joshua Tree, I was hooked. We decided to conduct a paranormal investigation, planning a camping trip to delve deep into the desert's secrets. We recruited Rachel, a young anthropology student, Derek, a photographer known for capturing mysterious phenomena, and Nina, a local medium who had been assisting in various exorcism cases. The desert had a surreal beauty, but it was impossible to shake the feeling of being watched. As we pitched our tents under a twisted Joshua tree, the silhouette of its branches against the setting sun looked almost like elongated fingers trying to grab us. The first night, as we sat around the campfire, Nina began to sense restless spirits around us. Derek's camera picked up orbs, streaks of light, and unexplainable figures in the darkness. Alex and Rachel, trying to maintain a scientific perspective, brushed them off as mere photographic glitches. The next day, as we explored, we stumbled upon remnants of an old settlement. Half buried in the sand was a journal dated back to the late 1800s. As Rachel read out the entries, we learned of a small community that had turned to devil worship. The journal's final entry spoke of an impending exorcism, but there was no conclusion, no closure. That evening, as the desert's chilling cold set in, we began our seance. Nina, as our guide, attempted to contact the spirits of the forsaken settlers. What happened next still haunts my nightmares. The campfire flickered wildly, despite the still air. Whispers echoed around us, too many voices to discern a single message. From the darkness, we heard the anguished cries of men, women, and children. Suddenly, the apparition of a young girl appeared before us, her eyes vacant, her mouth mouthing silent words. Nina, pale and trembling, explained that she was the spirit of a girl sacrificed during the failed exorcism. But she wasn't alone. Dark, shadowy figures began to emerge from the desert, surrounding our camp. The air grew dense, and a malevolent force weighed down on us. Derek, in a panic, tried to snap photos, but his camera malfunctioned, releasing a high-pitched scream before shutting down completely. I remember Alex shouting for us to stay together as we scrambled to escape the onslaught of vengeful spirits. Rachel clung to the journal, convinced it was the key to ending the haunting. Nina chanted protective prayers, her voice trembling but defiant. As dawn approached, the apparitions faded, leaving us shaken and disoriented. We left Joshua Tree that morning, vowing never to return. But the desert's shadows lingered long after. Derek's photographs, when developed, revealed faces of the damned, their eyes pleading for salvation. Rachel continued researching, desperate to find a way to free the spirits. I often wonder about the forsaken souls of Joshua Tree, trapped in an endless cycle of pain and torment. The memories of that haunted expedition remain vivid, a chilling reminder of the desert's dark secrets and the dangers of delving too deep into the unknown. Story number 3. Whispers of Death, the Moab Mirage. 2003, Moab, Utah. I can't begin to explain the trepidation that now fills my heart whenever I think of that fateful trip to Moab. It was meant to be an adventurous getaway, but it turned into a descent into hell. Liam and I had always shared a passion for the paranormal. When rumors spread of Moab's cursed camping grounds, we decided to go there, cameras in tow. Joining us were Veronica, an ambitious radio journalist, Bradley, a geologist intrigued by Moab's unique formations, and Elise, a psychic whose abilities were both revered and feared in the community. As we drove through the vast stretches of the desert, the beauty of the red rocks and arches was undeniable. We set up camp in an isolated spot, surrounded by an imposing landscape of red stone pillars. The first sign that things weren't right came the first night. Elise, during a casual tarot card reading, drew the death card repeatedly, regardless of how many times she reshuffled. Disturbed, she insisted that an ominous energy surrounded us. Veronica, keen on documenting every moment, initiated interviews. During one session, Elise suddenly froze, her gaze fixated on a distant rock formation. Following her line of sight, I could almost make out shadowy figures dancing ritualistically around a bonfire. The next day, Bradley, while studying some rocks, unearthed a series of old coins and a weathered photograph of a group dressed in cloaks, standing around a stone altar. The image was disturbing, to say the least. As night fell, our camp was flooded with eerie chants carried by the wind. Paranormal occurrences intensified, our equipment malfunctioned, tents rustled with no one inside, and a cold dread permeated the air. Elise, growing more agitated, claimed she could hear the screams of those who had suffered exorcism deaths, their spirits forever bound to the desert. She believed that our presence had awoken the spirits of a devil-worshipping cult that had once practiced dark rituals in the area. On the third night, terror took hold. Our campfire suddenly blazed up, casting long, monstrous shadows on the rocks. One by one, apparitions began to materialize, their faces contorted in anguish. The desert's very sands seemed to come alive, shifting and creating illusions of demonic entities. In the chaos, Veronica's radio equipment picked up ghostly transmissions, distorted prayers, pleas for mercy, and demonic laughter. Bradley, usually the skeptic, was paralyzed with fear as the ground beneath him trembled and cracked, revealing skeletal remains. Liam, desperate to protect us, tried to form a protective circle, urging Elise to guide the spirits away. But the malevolent forces were too strong. I remember being lifted off the ground, surrounded by a whirlwind of voices, before everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, it was dawn. Our camp was in ruins. Veronica's recordings bore witness to the unspeakable horrors we had endured, the voices of the damned echoing through her tapes. We left Moab with more questions than answers. Elise, deeply affected, retreated from the world, while Bradley abandoned his geological pursuits. Veronica's recordings became the stuff of legends, a chilling testament to the desert's haunted past. To this day, the memories haunt me. Every shadow, every whisper of the wind, brings me back to that cursed desert, reminding me of the night when the veil between life and death was lifted, revealing horrors beyond comprehension. Story number 4. Sands of Sedona, Echoes of the Forbidden Ritual. 2004, Sedona, Arizona. Every time I close my eyes, the haunting memories of that expedition to the outskirts of Sedona replay like a broken film reel. How naive we were to think it was just another desert adventure. It started with an invitation from Claire, my college roommate, to explore Sedona's famous vortexes. Known for its mystical energy centers, Claire believed they were connected to the afterlife. She was joined by Ethan, a budding archaeologist, and Stella, a historian specializing in ancient cults. The four of us set out, our spirits high. As we drove, the majestic red rock formations seemed to watch us, their shadows growing longer with the setting sun. Claire led us to a secluded spot, known only to a few locals. The first evening was peaceful. The desert's silence was only broken by Stella sharing tales of an old devil-worshipping sect that once thrived in the region. Ethan, always the skeptic, laughed them off. But Claire and I exchanged nervous glances. That night, my dreams were invaded by a procession of hooded figures chanting around an altar. I woke with a start, only to find Stella staring into the distance, her face pale. She claimed to have seen the same procession in her dreams. As dawn broke, Ethan's discovery of a half-buried altar aligned eerily with our shared nightmare. Stella, trembling, unearthed an old manuscript detailing a forbidden ritual performed on souls awaiting exorcism. The cult believed that harnessing these tormented souls granted them immense power. With the sun at its zenith, the desert's energy intensified. Claire, sensitive to the supernatural, began to hear whispers. I too felt an unsettling pull, urging me to complete the ritual described in Stella's manuscript. As night fell, our campsite became a hub of paranormal activity. The desert winds carried the anguished cries of the tormented souls. Figures manifested around the altar, beckoning us to join them. Driven by an unseen force, Claire began chanting from the manuscript. The air turned cold, and a thick fog enveloped us. Ethan, panicked, tried to disrupt the ritual, but it was too late. Stella screamed as the ground beneath her cracked open, revealing a vortex of lost souls. The hooded apparitions from our dreams emerged, their intent clear: to complete the ritual and bind our souls to the desert. I remember running, the weight of countless eyes upon me. Claire's chants grew louder, her voice intertwined with the cries of the damned. Just as hope seemed lost, a brilliant light blinded me. When it subsided, the apparitions had vanished. Claire lay unconscious by the altar, the manuscript reduced to ashes. Ethan and Stella, visibly shaken, recounted how they had witnessed the spirits being sucked into the vortex, their bonds finally broken. We left Sedona at first light, the trauma of our ordeal evident in our silence. Claire, forever changed, sought solace in spiritual healing. Ethan, his skepticism shattered, turned to researching the supernatural. Stella destroyed all records of her research, fearing the resurrection of the cult's practices. For me, Sedona's beauty hides a terrifying truth, a reminder of the day we danced with the devil, forever marked by the sands of the haunted desert. Story number 5. The Dark Oasis, Shadows of Joshua Tree. 2005, Joshua Tree, California. The desert, with its vast, unending expanses, was always a place of solace for me. But after that trip to Joshua Tree, it became a nightmarish realm I'd never tread again. My friend Jake, an avid photographer, had a penchant for capturing the eerie beauty of desolate landscapes. He invited me, along with Sarah, a folklore enthusiast, Marcus, a meteorologist intrigued by desert climates, and Lucy, an anthropologist, on a camping trip to the heart of Joshua Tree. Our journey began with enthusiasm. As we drove towards the park, the iconic Joshua trees stood like silent sentinels, watching over their domain. Marcus kept us entertained with stories of mysterious desert weather phenomena, while Sarah recounted legends of ancient spirits that were said to roam the area. The first evening was serene. Underneath a canopy of stars, Lucy shared her recent discovery of remnants pointing towards devil-worshipping tribes that once inhabited the desert. Their practices, she explained, were linked to the belief that the desert was a gateway to the underworld. As nights progressed, the tranquility of our surroundings gave way to an oppressive atmosphere. Jake, while reviewing his photos, noticed shadowy figures lurking behind the trees. In one of them, an altar, similar to what Lucy described, stood prominently, though none of us recalled seeing it. On the third day, while exploring a canyon, Marcus stumbled upon an old well, its waters eerily clear. He claimed to have seen faces of the damned reflecting back at him, their mouths opening in silent screams. That evening, a sandstorm hit. As Marcus tried to explain the oddity of a storm in that season, Sarah felt an invisible force pulling her towards the old well. We managed to restrain her, but her eyes, once filled with curiosity, now held a vacant, haunted look. As the storm raged on, Lucy began to frantically translate markings found near the well. They detailed a forbidden exorcism ritual where souls, instead of being freed, were bound eternally to the desert. The well, it appeared, served as their prison. In the eye of the storm, surrounded by swirling sands and echoing chants, we found ourselves at the altar from Jake's photograph. Ghostly apparitions circled us, their faces contorted in eternal agony, reaching out with skeletal hands. Lucy, drawing from her knowledge, began countering the ritual. As she chanted, the winds intensified. Sarah, her voice joining the wails of the trapped souls, screamed as she was lifted into the air. What happened next is a blur. I remember a blinding light, followed by an eerie calm. The storm had ceased, the altar was gone, and Sarah lay motionless on the desert floor. We left Joshua Tree at dawn, leaving behind the horrors we had witnessed. Jake gave up photography, the images from that trip too traumatic to revisit. Marcus, deeply affected, turned his focus to urban climates. Lucy went on a sabbatical, seeking to understand the dark forces we'd encountered. And me? I carry the weight of that trip, the haunting memories serving as a constant reminder of the malevolent forces lurking in the depths of the desert, forever waiting for their next victim. Story number 6. The Whispering Sands of Navajo. 2006, Navajo County, Arizona. As the vast expanse of the desert spread before us, little did we know the unspeakable horrors that lay ahead. My sister Lila and I had embarked on a road trip through the suburbs of the U.S., our hearts set on exploring the unique lore each place offered. Navajo County was our latest adventure, famous for its picturesque landscapes and Native American heritage. On our first night in the county, we met Julian, an anthropologist researching ancient tribal rituals, Riley, an investigative journalist tracking the spate of unexplained deaths in the area, and Isabel, a geologist fascinated by the desert's shifting sands. Lila, a history buff, regaled us with tales of devil-worshipping cults once rampant in these lands. Legend had it that they conducted sinister exorcisms, trapping souls within the desert's sands. As chilling as it sounded, none of us gave it much credence. One evening, as we camped by a prominent rock formation, Julian unearthed a set of aged tomes detailing a forbidden exorcism rite that allegedly gave the practitioner control over life and death. The ritual, he explained, involved using the life force of an innocent to appease malevolent spirits. That night, as the desert winds howled, Lila woke me with fear in her eyes. She recounted a dream where she was tied to an altar, the sands around her whispering ancient chants. I tried to calm her, but her terror was palpable. The next day, things took a sinister turn. Isabel, while studying the desert sands, found them to be imbued with electromagnetic energy. At specific spots, she could hear faint, agonized cries, almost as if the sands were alive with trapped souls. Riley, connecting the dots, shared his discovery of recent exorcism deaths in the region. Each victim was found drained of life, their last known location being the desert. The climax of our horror came one fateful night when Lila, in a trance, walked into the desert. We followed her to a clearing where the rock formation cast eerie shadows. Before our eyes, apparitions emerged from the sands, their ethereal chains pulling them towards my sister. As Julian began chanting from the tome to counteract the ritual, Riley and Isabel formed a protective circle around Lila. The ghosts, their faces reflecting centuries of torment, grew more frenzied, their chains tightening around my sister. Desperate, I screamed, my voice merging with the desert's haunting whispers. A brilliant flash lit up the night, and a deafening silence ensued. When my vision cleared, Lila lay unconscious in the sand, the apparitions gone. Julian, panting heavily, explained that the ritual had been countered, the souls freed. With dawn's first light, we left Navajo County, the weight of our harrowing experience heavy on our minds. Julian locked away the tome, hoping its dark secrets would never resurface. Riley published his findings, shedding light on the desert's mysteries. Isabel, deeply affected, sought solace in studying less tumultuous terrains. And Lila? She recovered, but a part of her remained lost to the desert. As for me, I carry the scars of that night, a haunting reminder of the time when the whispering sands of Navajo nearly claimed my sister. Story number 7. Dreadful Dunes of Sonora. 2007, Sonora Valley, Arizona. The vast stretches of the Sonoran Desert, with its arid beauty, was a place I had always found fascinating. But what began as a thrilling exploration soon turned into a nightmarish ordeal that I'll never forget. Ella, my childhood friend and a budding archaeologist, had recently discovered an ancient manuscript detailing occult practices in the region. Intrigued, we set out to explore the mysteries of Sonora. Joining us were Alan, a local historian well-versed in the legends of the area, and Mia, a parapsychologist eager to validate the existence of the supernatural. As we delved deeper into the desert, Ella shared details from the manuscript. It spoke of a devil-worshipping cult that thrived centuries ago. Their rituals, it was believed, revolved around trapping wandering souls into the desert sands, ensuring their perpetual torment. On our second night, as we camped under the vast starlit sky, Alan recounted tales of travelers who had ventured into the desert, only to never return. Their unexplained disappearances were attributed to the lingering spirits of the malevolent cult and their victims. Mia, equipped with her EVP recorder, captured chilling whispers. The voices, though barely audible, repeated the same ominous phrase, "Join us, forever bound." Things took a dark turn when Ella and I stumbled upon an ancient stone altar, eerily similar to the illustrations in her manuscript. Around it were deep footprints in the sand, despite no one having been there. That night, as the desert winds began to wail, Mia's equipment started picking up frenzied activity. Ella, in a trance, began chanting in an ancient tongue, mimicking the rituals from the manuscript. The very sands around us began to shift, revealing spectral figures, their hollow eyes fixated on us. Alan, realizing the danger, began countering the ritual using verses from local protective chants. Mia and I, hand in hand, formed a protective barrier around Ella, using salt and sage to ward off the spirits. But their numbers kept growing, and their cries grew louder, a cacophony of anguish and rage. Then, in a desperate bid, Alan smashed the ancient manuscript onto the altar. A blinding pillar of light shot up into the sky, and an all-encompassing silence followed. When I opened my eyes, dawn was breaking. Ella lay unconscious next to the now broken altar, the manuscript reduced to ashes. Alan, though exhausted, assured us the spirits were now at rest. We left the Sonora Valley with heavy hearts and a tale too terrifying to recount. Mia's recordings were lost, wiped clean of the night's events. Alan continued his research, ensuring such rituals remained forgotten. Ella took a break from her archaeological pursuits, the trauma too fresh in her mind. And me? The haunting memories of that night serve as a constant reminder of the perils that lurk in the deceptive beauty of the desert, where ancient spirits still roam, forever bound to the dreadful dunes of Sonora. Story number 8. The Whispering Sands of Silver Peak. 2008, Silver Peak, Nevada. Silver Peak always seemed like a quaint town, its proximity to the vast desert making it a place of endless legends. That summer, my friends and I decided to go camping, lured by tales of haunted desert landscapes. Lucas, our ever-enthusiastic leader, had heard rumors about an ancient burial ground where devil worshippers had once performed dark ceremonies. Sarah, his girlfriend and a nursing student, was along for the thrill. Then there was Ben, a geology major, who was curious about the desert formations. Emily, a seasoned journalist, and I hoped to document whatever we encountered. One evening, as we pitched our tents under the vast desert sky, Ben discovered peculiar rock carvings that pointed to ritualistic activities. The symbols matched those found in ancient texts describing rites to summon spirits from the underworld. As night fell, Emily decided to interview locals using her portable recorder. An elderly woman recounted a story from her youth. A group had attempted an exorcism in the desert, but instead of repelling spirits, they had unintentionally anchored them to the land. That night, Lucas and Sarah, drawn by an unseen force, began dancing around the campfire, chanting in an unrecognizable language. The sand seemed to whisper, and ghostly apparitions began emerging, their hollow eyes filled with anger. Terrified, Emily began playing back her recordings, hoping to identify the chant Lucas and Sarah were reciting. To our horror, the recordings now contained haunting voices describing a series of gruesome deaths that had occurred in the desert, victims of dark ceremonies gone awry. Ben, using his knowledge of earth elements, decided on a desperate plan. He suggested creating a barrier using specific minerals to repel the spirits. As we worked hurriedly, Lucas and Sarah's chanting grew louder, their voices merging with the wails of the trapped spirits. Then, in a chilling moment, Sarah collapsed, her body marked with symbols similar to the rock carvings. Lucas, snapping out of his trance, screamed in despair. Together with Emily, we managed to complete the mineral barrier just as dawn broke, trapping the malevolent spirits on the other side. Lucas and Sarah never spoke of that night. Sarah's mysterious markings faded, but the trauma remained. Ben continued his studies, focusing now on the metaphysical properties of minerals. Emily's recordings were mysteriously erased, but she wrote an article about our ordeal, which was dismissed as fiction by most. As for me, I still hear the whispers when I close my eyes, a constant reminder of the dark secrets buried in the sands of Silver Peak. Our search for adventure had led us to face horrors beyond our wildest nightmares. The desert, with its haunting beauty, hides secrets that perhaps should remain undiscovered. Story number 9. The Forgotten Roads of Dry Hollow. 2009, Dry Hollow, Texas. Dry Hollow. The name should have been a clear sign of the arid horrors we'd encounter. Yet, naively hoping for an adventurous summer, my best friend Alice and I had embarked on a road trip through the haunting landscape. Alice was a budding archaeologist, and the allure of the desert's unexplored history was too enticing for her to resist. As we drove deeper into Dry Hollow, we stumbled upon a makeshift campsite. There we met Dean, a journalist investigating unexplained deaths in the area, Laura, a meteorologist studying the abnormal weather patterns, and Raphael, a priest seeking answers to rumors of devil worship. One night, as we sat around the campfire, Raphael shared stories of exorcism deaths that plagued the area decades ago. The rituals, performed improperly, had led to souls being trapped between realms. Dean revealed his findings. Every death in Dry Hollow corresponded with a failed exorcism. On the third night, Laura showed us her instruments, which started behaving erratically, indicating an unnatural shift in the atmosphere. Then, as the winds howled, ghostly apparitions materialized, their faces twisted in anguish. Alice, intrigued by a sudden mound formation nearby, started digging. Unearthing an old talisman, she unwittingly invoked the spirits of devil worshippers, their voices echoing with menacing chants. The atmosphere grew suffocating, the desert sands swirling around us in vengeful tornadoes. In the chaos, I saw Dean frantically scribbling in his notebook, trying to document every eerie occurrence. Laura, relying on her scientific expertise, theorized that disrupting the weather might disperse the apparitions. Raphael, recognizing the chants, realized they were summoning an ancient demon. Knowing the risks, he began an exorcism, hoping to free the trapped souls and repel the malevolent spirits. Alice and I joined hands, channeling our energy to aid Raphael. Hours felt like seconds, and seconds like hours, until a deafening silence enveloped the desert. The apparitions faded, and the talisman crumbled to dust. Exhausted and traumatized, we left Dry Hollow at dawn. Dean's articles about the incident never saw the light of day, dismissed as mere fiction. Laura left meteorology, haunted by the supernatural events she couldn't explain. Raphael continued his spiritual journey, strengthened in his faith. Alice and I, though forever changed, held on to our bond. Every now and then, when the winds carry whispers of forgotten tales, we remember the terrifying night when the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred in the cursed sands of Dry Hollow. Story number 10. Whispers of Sand Hollow. 2010, Sand Hollow, Nevada. Every decade seems to have a moment that defines it, and in 2010, my friends and I faced ours. The events of that summer, now a mere echo of a distant nightmare, continue to haunt me. Sand Hollow, a barely known suburb, was our destination. I, an avid photographer, was seeking landscapes untouched by modernity. Alongside me were my college buddy, Mark, who had an insatiable appetite for thrill, Leah, an anthropologist drawn to the desert's ancient tales, and Evan, a parapsychologist eager to probe paranormal occurrences in the desert. From day one, odd things began. While I was clicking photos, I captured silhouettes of figures where no one stood. Leah, poring over old journals, found references to a lost tribe that once inhabited Sand Hollow, reportedly practicing dark rituals and devil worship. Evan set up equipment, detecting electromagnetic anomalies, implying spiritual activity. One night, as the chilling winds swept across our campsite, we heard whispers. Words in an ancient dialect. Leah identified it as belonging to the lost tribe, warning us of the vengeance of the Forsaken. Mark, ever the skeptic, mocked our fears until the night he went missing. A frantic search led us to a forgotten shrine with symbols of exorcism, indicating tragic attempts to purge evil spirits. In the middle lay Mark, unconscious but alive, surrounded by ghostly apparitions. Leah, remembering rituals from the journals, began chanting a protection spell, while Evan used his equipment to generate a frequency, hoping to disperse the spirits. I, driven by sheer adrenaline, started clicking, capturing the entities on film, each flash dispelling them further. As dawn approached, the spirits retreated, leaving behind a traumatized Mark who remembered nothing. Our equipment, journals, and my photos were mysteriously destroyed when we returned to our campsite. Leah abandoned her research on ancient tribes, and Evan became a recluse, delving deeper into the spirit world. Mark, after years of therapy, finally moved on, but our friendship, strained by the traumatic event, was never the same. Driving away from Sand Hollow, I took one last photo, capturing a spectral figure in the rearview mirror. To this day, I don't dare develop that film, for some memories, especially those from Sand Hollow, are best left buried in the sands of time. Story number 11. Echoes of Silver Peak. 2011, Silver Peak, Arizona. Silver Peak wasn't on many maps in 2011, a suburb so remote that it felt untouched by the advancements of the 21st century. It was this allure that brought us there, a group of adventurous souls, eager to uncover the secrets that lay dormant in its expansive deserts. I was Alice, a budding journalist, hoping to write about the unique culture and traditions of Silver Peak's inhabitants. Beside me was my boyfriend, Danny, a folklore enthusiast, Rachel, a historian fascinated by old civilizations, and our two guides, Tom, a local who knew the desert like the back of his hand, and Sarah, an urban explorer with knowledge of forgotten places. Our journey started off seemingly normal. The vast expanse of the desert, with its undulating dunes and clear skies, was breathtaking. Tom led us to an ancient burial ground one day, cautioning us not to disturb the peace. Ignoring his warning, Danny took a small artifact as a souvenir. That night, everything changed. Rachel, sifting through her research, discovered that Silver Peak was once the site of devil worship, with tales of exorcism deaths and unexplained disappearances. The artifact Danny had taken was linked to those very rituals. As darkness enveloped our campsite, strange occurrences began. We heard whispers, chants in an archaic language that Rachel believed belonged to the devil worshippers of old. Shadowy figures moved just beyond the light of our campfire, their eyes glowing menacingly. Panicking, Sarah recalled an abandoned church nearby, rumored to be a place where exorcisms took place. Hoping it would offer some refuge, we raced there. Inside, we found evidence of recent rituals, bloodied altars, and symbols scrawled on the walls. Suddenly, Danny started convulsing, the artifact in his hand glowing ominously. Realizing he was possessed, Tom and Rachel quickly began an impromptu exorcism, using the old rites Rachel had uncovered. Sarah and I held Danny down, terrified but determined. The church echoed with Danny's screams, the sounds of the desert, and the cacophony of the spirits angered by our trespasses. Hours seemed like minutes, but as dawn approached, Danny's convulsions ceased. The entity, expelled from his body, vanished into the desert winds. We left Silver Peak at first light. The artifact was returned, and Danny, though physically fine, was forever haunted by that night. Years have passed since our ill-fated trip, but the memories remain vivid. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow in the corner of my eye, reminds me of that night in Silver Peak. Some places, no matter how alluring, are best left unexplored. Story number 12. Whispers of Stone Hollow. 2012, Stone Hollow, Nevada. I remember driving down the deserted roads of Stone Hollow, the air thick with anticipation and the faint hum of the car's engine as my only companion. My name's Emily, a photographer with an itch for the paranormal. Next to me was Liam, my best friend and a paranormal investigator. Our crew consisted of Jessica, a geologist interested in the unique rock formations of Stone Hollow, Mark, a botanist studying the resilient desert flora, and Zoe, a seasoned hiker with tales of haunted trails. Stone Hollow was our chosen destination due to unsettling rumors. Stories spoke of a cursed campground, where campers often heard chants from long-lost civilizations and saw apparitions in the moonlight. One evening, as we set up camp near a distinctive rock formation Jessica was studying, Mark found peculiar plants. They weren't native to the region and exuded a pungent, almost hypnotic aroma. Zoe warned us about tales she'd heard, stories of those who went mad after being exposed to those very plants. That night, the desert came alive. We heard rhythmic drumming, growing louder and more insistent. Chants in a tongue none of us recognized echoed through the vastness. The ground beneath us vibrated, not from an earthquake, but from something far more ancient. Liam, his equipment buzzing with strange readings, suddenly shouted that we were on sacred ground, a place of devil worship and ritualistic sacrifices. As he spoke, ghostly figures emerged from the desert's haze, their hollow eyes fixed on us. Horrified, we watched as the figures began a sinister dance around our campsite, the chanting reaching a feverish pitch. Mark, drawn by some unseen force, walked trance-like towards the apparitions, the plant he had earlier discovered clutched tightly in his hand. It was Zoe, with her knowledge of the desert, who realized that we were surrounded by a circle of those hypnotic plants, forming a barrier we couldn't cross. As Mark joined the ghostly dance, Jessica began to recite an old exorcism chant she had once studied, hoping it would repel the spirits. The desert night was filled with our shouts, the relentless drumming, and the haunting chants. It felt like an eternity, but as the first rays of dawn began to pierce the horizon, the apparitions faded, and the drumming ceased. Mark, dazed and confused, was found a few meters away, with no memory of the night's events. We left Stone Hollow with more questions than answers. Every so often, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the faintest hint of that chilling drumming, reminding me of the desert's ancient secrets. Sometimes, there are places on Earth that demand to be left alone, and Stone Hollow is one such place. Story number 13. Echoes of Red Dune. 2013, Red Dune, Arizona. I can still feel the sweltering heat of that day in Red Dune when I, Aaron, a freelance journalist, decided to uncover the truth behind the town's disturbing legends. Driving beside me was Alex, my childhood friend and an anthropology graduate, passionate about folklore and ancient rituals. Our contacts in the town were Eliza, a librarian who had compiled decades of newspaper clippings and town records on mysterious incidents, and James, a local historian with deep family roots in Red Dune. Red Dune was infamous for its vast desert expanse, known to locals as the Whispering Wastes. Stories had circulated for years about campers hearing voices in the desert winds, shadows lurking just outside of campfire light, and exorcism rites gone awry leading to inexplicable deaths. We set up camp in the desert, and as night cloaked us, the desert's eerie silence was palpable. I began recording ambient sounds for my documentary when suddenly, whispers floated on the wind. They grew louder, echoing ancient chants and ritualistic drum beats. Alex, his face pale, whispered that these sounded like old pagan rites, possibly connected to devil worship. James recalled tales of his ancestors participating in forbidden rituals in these very sands. Suddenly, the desert ground shook, and ghostly apparitions rose, circling our camp. They were chanting, their hollow eyes fixed on Eliza, who was clutching a family locket. She screamed, revealing that the locket had been involved in an exorcism ritual that resulted in her great-grandmother's death. As the spirits closed in, James started to recite a counter-chant he'd learned from his grandfather. The ghosts seemed agitated, but the whispers grew softer, the winds calmer. Hours seemed like seconds, and as dawn broke, the apparitions faded into the rising sun. We packed our belongings, leaving the haunted desert behind. Eliza decided to bury the cursed locket deep in the heart of Red Dune, hoping to lay the spirits to rest. To this day, when I recall that night, the whispers of Red Dune still send shivers down my spine. Some places, scarred by the echoes of the past, are best left unexplored. Story number 14. Sands of Sorrow. 2014, Bitter Wind, New Mexico. I still remember the blinding sun and how it cast long, stretching shadows over the Bitter Wind Desert, a place of legend and fear. My name is Mia, a budding filmmaker with an ambition to capture the uncanny. Alongside me were my close friends, Ryan and Sarah, always eager for an adventure. We had recently heard whispers of strange occurrences in the desert, and we were determined to unravel the mystery. For our quest, we sought the expertise of Martin, a geologist intrigued by the shifting sands of Bitter Wind, and Leah, a local historian with knowledge of the land's dark past. Our first night camping under the starlit sky, everything seemed calm until the chilling gusts began. The winds carried with them whispers, fragmented lullabies of sorrow. As I fumbled with my camera, Sarah, with wide terrified eyes, pointed at a series of footprints appearing in the sand, leading to our campsite, then disappearing into the night. Leah, her voice shaking, told us of a cult that had existed in Bitter Wind in the 1800s, known for devil worship and sinister rituals. The last ritual they performed resulted in numerous unexplained deaths, and ever since the desert was believed to be haunted by the souls who perished that night. Ryan, always the skeptic, laughed it off until he stumbled upon a buried wooden box. Inside was a diary, detailing an exorcism that had taken place right where we camped. The victim? Leah's ancestor. The realization made the weight of the desert's legends tangible. That night, ghostly apparitions of hooded figures danced around our campfire, their chants growing louder. Martin, desperate to shield us, started drawing symbols in the sand. With each symbol, the figures hissed and retreated. It was a battle of wills between Martin's symbols and the ghostly figures until, at long last, dawn broke, causing the apparitions to vanish. We left Bitter Wind, our souls weighed down by what we had witnessed. The desert remains, holding its secrets and souls, a testament to the horrors of the past. To this day, when the winds howl outside my window, I'm reminded of the haunting whispers of Bitter Wind and am grateful for the safety of my home. Story number 15. Whispers of Wraithfield. 2015, Wraithfield, Nevada. I'll never forget the summer of 2015. The very mention of Wraithfield sends shivers down my spine. My name's Jake, an aspiring journalist, and next to me was my college buddy and enthusiastic photographer, Claire. Our goal was clear, to document the unknown occurrences of Wraithfield Desert. For this expedition, we decided to bring in a few experts. There was Amanda, an anthropologist with a deep interest in ancient rituals, Neil, a meteorologist who'd been studying the unique weather patterns over Wraithfield, and Ben, a local, who as a child had experienced bizarre phenomena and now worked as a tour guide, reluctantly sharing the haunted tales of the desert. Our first evening, as I set up camp, Neil's equipment picked up an odd frequency. A low hum, interspersed with what sounded like distant cries. Ben, clearly disturbed, recalled legends of devil worshippers from the 1700s who'd perform moonlit sacrifices, their victims' spirits forever wandering the sands. The next day, while Claire captured the barren landscapes, Amanda discovered underground chambers with walls adorned with symbols and drawings. These detailed rituals of possession and exorcism. What chilled us to the bone was a fresco showing figures eerily similar to our group, standing around a sacrificial stone. That night, the desert came alive. Ghostly silhouettes circled our tents, their mourning wails echoing in the wind. I tried to capture everything on film, but my camera malfunctioned, and Claire's photos only showed blinding white light. Amid the chaos, Amanda began chanting, attempting to communicate with the restless spirits. However, it only enraged them further. It was then that Ben revealed his true profession, not just a tour guide, but a trained exorcist. He set up a protective barrier with salt, while Neil documented changes in atmospheric pressure. As Ben's chants grew louder, a fierce sandstorm enveloped us. Through the blinding sands, I saw a ghostly figure approach Claire. With immense strength, I pulled her back just as the figure vanished into thin air. Come morning, the desert was calm again. Ben, pale and exhausted, said he'd managed to put some spirits to rest, but not all. Some still roamed, searching for closure. Our team left Wraithfield, our perspectives forever changed. The desert remains, whispering its tales of sorrow to those who dare to listen. Every time I look back at that blank footage, I'm reminded of the spirits we encountered, forever imprinted in our memories.